All right. Hello, everyone. This is Angel Leon, your host at Minority Mavericks. And this is the show where you get to listen to the stories of all minority mavericks out there, founders, entrepreneurs, and investors of this world. And in today's episode, we have Mateus Felini, and he is the founder and CEO at Datlo. Welcome to the show, Mateus.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really happy to have you here and have your story, be told to everyone out there. So to that end, let's start with your journey. I would love for you to introduce yourself, tell us your background, where you come from, where you're from, and then just tell us that, journey from where you started all the way to, where you are today.
All right, great. Well, so as Angel mentioned, I am CEO and founder of Datlo. Datlo is a location intelligence platform. Was born in a interior city in the south of Brazil. And to this day, Datlo is based here. Most of our employees are here. I graduated in geography, had a master's degree about location data transparency. And at that time, I developed environmental projects for companies that needed a high level of compliance with complicated environmental laws, especially when they were expanding. And sometimes they would lose millions because they made bad decisions about the place to build a new plant, for example, a new store. And I understood this was a very common problem.
Okay.
And I was studying data transparency laws in my master's degree at the same time, and I could see how much data there was available for companies to use and make better decisions and avoid trouble from the efficiency and legal perspectives. And I would ask myself, why don't they just make location analysis before making decisions? Why would they make bad decisions? And I understood that the reason for that is because there was no proper tool for companies to make this analysis. The GIS softwares available were too complicated. They didn't have much data embedded. Companies would have to go and find the data for themselves. And it's not so easy to get data in Brazil, especially when you are not in a large city, when you are not in a capital. So I started working on this project. I thought, what if we make a GIS platform that is so intuitive that everyone could use, business users with no technical skills could use this software to make decisions. It would already have the data they need, and they could implement it easily in their decision-making process. So I started working on this project. At the beginning, I didn't really have any money to pay for anyone, so I had to learn how to code. The company at the time was just me. Was able to sell this rough and ugly MVP for a few companies. Then I met my co-founder Raissa, she's our CTO, and she developed the first not MVP product. So the first product, the first version of the software that was an actual product, and we could start selling to a lot of other companies. And we could see that there was this huge market gap for a software like that in Brazil.
Nice.
And one thing is that companies in Brazil were not so used to pay for software, to pay a lot of money for software. So we had all this kind of education curve that we had to show companies that they needed something like that. And so basically at the beginning we had to work a lot, like 16 hours a day, me and Raissa, to be able to grow the company. But we were able to overcome these initial challenges and get into the traction phase. Yeah, so that's the beginning of the journey.
Nice. Very nice, Mateus. And, it's very interesting, your background as well, and how you managed to just basically, focus on your goal, right? And then just do whatever it takes to get to it. So I really appreciate that. And I'm sure that our listeners as well. I'm sure that all of that, though, it sounds amazing and great, right? When you tell it like that, but I'm sure that it came with a lot of challenges and struggles. Would you like to share a little bit more about, from a minority perspective as well, right? And to basically just, define the minority here. It's not just about being Latino or Hispanic or from other country here in the United States, but I know Datlo is a YC company,
Hmm.
graduated company.
Yeah.
So I would like to understand your perspective from that minority perspective, right here in the U.S. What are those challenges that you guys faced here as a company from Brazil?
Yeah. So I guess there are two things about that. Usually, when I think about the challenges that we have, I like to think about Raisa, because I believe that she had so much more challenges than I did, because she's a female CTO, one of the very few female CTOs in Brazil. Actually, also, even in the Silicon Valley, there aren't so many female software developers,
Yeah.
and she's also LGBTQ. So she had to be able to work in a environment that is mostly dominated by men,
Hmm.
and she was able to feature herself as an awesome software developer. When I met her, she had already built another company and be able to have her work admired by all of these people, even when prejudice is such a common thing to this day. So the fact that she was able to become so relevant in the software development community in Brazil is something that I really admired, because I believe she had to put a lot more work to achieve that than probably any man would have to. So when I think about the challenges, I usually think about her, because I believe she had so much more challenges than I did. But
Yeah.
when we as a company look to this international expansion, then there is a lot more challenges, because you know we have the language barrier. When we got into Y Combinator, we actually didn't even speak a lot of English.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, so there was a lot of challenges about that. Challenges to make the investors understand the Brazilian markets, the Brazilian companies. Um, and to this day, to make sales, we also see that usually American companies don't want to think that they are buying from a Brazilian company that is
Mhm.
expanding to the US. We have to try to look the most American possible to be able to get customers in the US. So there are a lot of
Yeah.
challenges about that too.
Yeah, definitely. And I can see, it's all related to that fake risk that investors kind of, talk about with minority groups, right?
Yeah.
And I always say that it's not, it's a fictitious thing. It's not a real risk. I think it's more of a fear from them.
Yes.
And I do believe that, just like your story of your co-founder, minority people tend to have a lot more resiliency than others. And I believe that, resiliency is one of those main characteristics, right? About a successful entrepreneur, right? A successful founder is someone that never takes no for an answer, right? And even if they have no as an answer, right? They're always looking to, okay, how do I turn that no into a yes?
Yes.
And that's the journey, right? And it's very impressive, right, to hear that story. And that's, it's her story, but it's also the story of Datlo, right? In the sense that how is it that you as a co-founder as well invited that into, right, the company. A lot of people wouldn't. So that's very admirable from your part to actually right invite that struggle that you knew up front. Okay, this is going to be a little challenging, but now and then, right? She probably proved to you that this is not the case. And you guys graduated from YC. That's another thing to say there for in your behalf. So yeah, really impressive, Mateus. Really good.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in terms of what Datlo is doing, and let's talk a little bit more about data in general.
Hmm.
And And then I want to kind of focus more on the data diversity. So can you elaborate a little bit more on the strategies and measures, right, that are implemented within your location intelligence platform to ensure that diverse data sourcing is actually happening?
Yeah, great. That's actually a great question, Angel, because geographic bias is a very important thing to understand. In Brazil, we have a lot of regional social inequality. So we have regions that are so much richer than others, and as a consequence, you might not have as much data from places with higher social inequality as you have in richer places.
Okay.
So there are two very important things about it. One of the things is that one of the biggest geographic bias causes is the absence of data from one place compared to another.
Mm-hmm.
And so we must have data from every place in the territory that we are working with, regardless of social inequality or the richness of these places. So we have to have data not just from capitals, big cities. There are places that companies usually look the most, but also remote places, socially vulnerable places, because when you don't have data about socially vulnerable places, you actually hide all the potential these places have for economic development. And companies are actually interested in understanding this potential. They are really looking for opportunities. But if you don't have data about these places, you are hiding this potential, and
Mm-hmm.
you create kind of a cycle, because uh, the, these companies don't go to these places, and people, as a consequence, have less opportunities to have access to better uh,
Progress.
consumption, better job opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one very important thing. The absence of data is not the only geographic bias when you think about location analysis, but it's certainly one of the biggest ones. So we try to overcome that by working with data sets that are not originally built for business analysis. So, for example, we work with a lot of data sets that are originally built for government policies, social
Okay.
policies from the government. And even those data sets sometimes are really bad. Um, for example, during my master's degree, there were entire neighborhoods that simply would not exist in official maps of the government, because the government didn't consider these places as a
Mm-hmm.
official neighborhood, because people occupied these abandoned places because they didn't have any other place to live, and the government don't consider it as part of the city, but it's actually part of the city. There's business going on there are people living, there's people consuming and working. So we also have to get data from uh, different places, mostly online. So we have to craft data and be able to try to get data from all these places, even when the government don't have this data.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting because it's basically isolating, right?
Yeah,
That's what you do when you're trying to build something or change something or create some sort of program, and here you are collecting data, but then, like you say, all this missing data, where is it, right? And where are all these people, and who's talking to these people, who's taking care
yeah,
of these people? So it's very isolating right now in terms of data diversity, I would say, in across a lot of different industries. So it's really good that your company Datlo is integrating with diversity in their data, trying to get to points where people are not getting. That's very, very important, I would say. And I'm guessing that's probably, the success that you guys have had as well, and how you guys have been able to differentiate from your competitors, right? Everyone
Yeah.
wants to work with the Googles of the world, right? Everyone wants to get Google's data, but no one wants to get, the data of that zip code in X country and X town that they have 100 people only, and no one wants to know about them.
Yeah,
Um,
and location data is so important. There was this story that people told me when I went to visit a community during my master's degree. And this community was not recognized as a official part of the city because it was a place that people occupied, people who didn't have anywhere else to go. And there are like 3,000 families living there. It wasn't small, it was a very big thing. And they told this story that once a man was feeling sick, and they took this man to the hospital, to the public hospital, and they refused to give him medical attention because he didn't have a official address, because the address from that neighborhood were not accepted as a official address, and the man died. So the absence of location data actually is really dangerous for people. People get hurt because of that. So it's really important to understand that we have to get data from all the places that are people living in, not just the places that are considered important for that.
Definitely, and then this probably applies again to all industries out there, not just healthcare or right.
Yeah.
It's all over. And in terms of what Datlo is doing with what is called user-centric design, right? How are you dealing with the user-centric design for inclusivity? So in
Mhm.
creating these user experiences in your platform, right? How is it that your team approaches the user-centric design to ensure that there's inclusivity, right? Considering diverse backgrounds and ethnicities, right, and different perspectives.
Yeah. So since the beginning, the idea was to build a really intuitive platform and interface that all users could use to build maps even when they didn't have technical skills. And we built this interface to be really easy for users to work with. And also, we handled the data in a way that was easy to understand, that you didn't have to be a data scientist to understand this data, to analyze it or cross it with different data sets. But right now, we are living in a very exciting time because of AI and natural language.
Yeah.
And in the location softwares, natural language is actually a huge deal because it changes the way that people works with maps. So what happened is that maps really didn't have much evolution in the last maybe 20 years, 30 years. Didn't Things didn't change a lot. Didn't get better in any relevant way. The last time that maps had a huge transformation is when we went from printed to digital maps.
Right.
When that happened, it was so much easier for people to build a map. People didn't have to be a cartographer to build a map. And because there was so much more maps being built, there was so much more maps being used by people. And natural language actually breaks this barrier again, because you now don't even have to be able to work with a GIS platform. You just have to ask for data. You can use natural language to build maps. And we believe that natural language will change the the way people natural language will change the relation that people have with maps by the same
Hmm.
order of magnitude of when we went from printed to digital maps. Maps didn't change what they are essentially, but it got so much easier to work with maps and to build maps that much more people could do that. And so we believe that natural language will break this barrier again, and millions of people will be able to build and use so much more maps on the daily basis.
Cool. Yeah, it's very interesting. The way and the perspective you bring in here in terms of, when was the last time, right, that we as humans, right, we
Yeah.
revisited maps, and how do we not just create the maps, but like you're saying, how do I navigate through these maps correctly, right? And then at the same time, again, bringing all that inclusivity into the industry, so that we're not just looking at the maps and at the places that we want to look at, but we're looking at everything at once, right?
Yes, exactly.
Not isolating anyone, and which is, at the end of the day, the point of this show, right, is to identify these minority stories. So I really appreciate everything that Datlo is doing. Is very interesting. I really like the approach of your data diversity there, and where you're going with that. So I truly believe in what you guys are doing too. So I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be very, very successful. Um, but just to kind of maybe wrap up a little bit here, talk to us a little bit about your future plans, any future plans that you have personally or with Datlo, and then maybe at the end give a little bit of advice to any aspiring minority entrepreneur founder out there, as
Mhm.
to how is it that they should navigate this, or basically just tell them a few tips and tricks on how to navigate challenges in the minority ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, so one thing that we learned is that we have to build a global company, because usually companies from emerging markets, they start wanting to build something local. For example, when we started, we dreamed about being the data platform for LATAM. And when we got into Y Combinator, we understood that American companies, they don't think about that. US companies, they usually just build, for example, the data company for the world, not for the United States. And the companies from these emerging markets like Brazil or other countries, we started thinking so locally. And I understood that we don't have to limit ourselves to that. We can also be able to build these global solutions.
Mhm.
And this is a very interesting thing, because actually this is what made us go after raising money. So we bootstrapped the company at the beginning, and at a certain point we understood that we would have to raise money if we wanted to build a global company, to go to other places. And we understood that we had to do this from the best investors that we could find, and that was Y Combinator. In our perspective, we wanted Y Combinator, and it was really hard to get into YC. We tried 3 times, and every time we got rejected. We would The next time we would show a lot of improvement, a lot of growth, both on the growth of the company and also the ability of the founders. So in the third time we got in, and to go from the middle of nowhere to receive the investment of the best investors that we could find, it was a huge challenge, but we had to overcome it. And it was part of this vision that we really need to build something globally, that we cannot limit ourselves just because we are from an emerging market, because it's a very common thing for founders from these markets to think that they have to build a company to be able to help just these markets, as if they were not able to build a company to help the whole world. So that's our vision for the future.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's very good, and it's also interesting, Mateo, that you said like about 2 or 3 times already. You started a sentence saying, American companies don't this, American companies can't this, And the way I kind of process that is, exactly the problem, right? That American companies are not aware and they're not opening up, right, to other things. So you're bringing a completely new perspective to an American market. And it's not that your solution or your perspective is wrong. It's that the other perspective, the American side, right, is not recognizing that. And I think it's time that we start recognizing these things, because this things like you do, and Datlo as a company coming from Brazil, for example, it just expands and brings more fruit to our ecosystem here in the US. So why not invite that, right? Why not be open to that, and then just bring the opportunities, bring the diversity. I believe that's how we potentially could start bringing in diversity into the ecosystem a little bit more.
Yeah, when I think about American market, the reason that I mention it so particularly
Hmm.
is because it is the biggest market in the world, but it's actually a very closed market.
Right.
American people are great. I never met an American person that I didn't like. But when you look at business, European countries, they are more used to use products and services from other countries than the
Mhm.
United States. United States companies are usually just using American products. So there is this barrier to break that is actually getting better every year, but we still have to deal with kind of this closed market, this market that is very uh, that looks much more to the inside than the outside.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And there's a lot of work to do. So and I believe that Datlo is, doing its part. So I'm sure that every person that's listening to this also, appreciates what you guys are doing. So again, Mateus, thank you for being on the show. This was great.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Angel.
All right, and everyone, this was Mateus Felini, and he is the founder and CEO at Datlo. And this was Angel Lee, and your host at Minority Mavericks. This is a show where you can listen to the stories of all minority entrepreneur founders and investors out there. See you next time.